The Mercedes EQS. That was the first EV that Mercedes brought to the United States. Now, of course, I know we did get the electric B-Class, but we don't talk about that here. The EQS was the first, and the S-Class from Mercedes is a very important vehicle. It is the pinnacle of luxury. And fun fact, the most mentioned car model in rap music is the S-Class. So I think it's very important that we talk about the new 2027 Mercedes EQS. Now, I remember for years, Mercedes was showing off these insane, the most crazy looking concept cars, and they never make the concept cars look like the real thing. So I don't know who in their right mind was designing this stuff. I know I'm showing it on screen. They look crazy, but eventually we finally got an electric version of the S-Class. Mercedes made generally a good vehicle. It did well at the time. Its specs on paper and in real-world driving tests showed that the EQS was a good vehicle. It brought a lot of what we love from the internal combustion engine S-Class and brought it to a competitive electric vehicle platform. Well, it's been a couple years and it's 2026 and we got a new model year EQS, all right? We're moving on from 400 volts. We're moving on from average efficiency and 200 kilowatt charging rates. We're moving up. The 2027 EQS is getting 800 volts, all right? We're 350 kilowatt peak charging rate. Now, I know on the surface, you're looking at it and you're like, Isaiah, this car looks the exact same as the last year model year. And that is because you're absolutely correct. For the most part, it looks exactly the same. Now, Mercedes did bring in the Starlight grille that we're seeing on a lot of the new generation EV models from Mercedes, where the grille illuminates with a bunch of lights. We see that on the Mercedes GLC EV, the CLA EV, the GLB EV, and we're seeing it here on the S-Class EV. We also saw it on the VLE. And so that's one of the more bigger changes, but on the outside, it is functionally the exact same vehicle. However, underneath, a lot has changed. Mercedes says more than 25% of the components are new or updated. And this moves it to Mercedes 800 volt architecture. The GLC, the GLB, the VLE, all of those are 800 volts. We're moving the EQS to 800 volts, and that's a big deal. Mercedes says that this 2027 new EQS fixes a lot of the problems and the limitations of the last generation EQS. And that's really what it is. This really is the next generation EQS. But they say that this new generation is going to really move the EQS up a notch. Now, you guys know, if you're familiar with me on the Auto Spec channels, you know that we did the I-90 Surge. I was a part of Team EQS. And so we took a Mercedes EQS, we drove it all the way from Seattle to Boston, nonstop across highway, Interstate 90. And I got to drive, ride, experience, sleep in, relax in luxury in the EQS. And it is generally a good vehicle, but nothing too spectacular. We know the Porsche Taycan with its 800 volt, really quick, 11-minute charging stops. Same thing with the Lucid Air, quick charging, and you're still getting a lot of those luxurious features. It's not as bad as the i7, which charging on that part, really bad. But the EQS was just kind of there. It had good route planning. It was luxurious. It was comfortable. The audio was good. It was an efficient vehicle, and it got really good range. But bringing it over 800 volts means things are getting a little bit more efficient. This also means we're getting higher charge rates, which also means that the EQS should perform a lot better on those road trips, which is one of the bigger limitations of the EQS during our road trip. It handled well, but the EQS was really built for the 70-year-old man who's buying his new S-Class and he's like, let me get an electric one. And he gets the electric one and, he goes to the charger and he's okay with, stopping for 30 minutes. Mercedes is quoting that you can add 200 miles of range to the Mercedes EQS in as little as 10 minutes. And so this is where, I want to see the charging curve on this thing. We already know that the CLA, which you've already seen on the road and people are testing and driving and living with, and the charging curve on that is really good. And so again, they're bringing the same architecture from their newer EVs, bringing that to the EQS. And so it should have a really good charging curve. And this is 350 kilowatts peak coming for the new EQS. Mercedes says thinner cabling, better thermal efficiency, faster charging, and higher sustained performance. And they say this is the single biggest platform improvement since EQS launched. And I believe them. Mercedes says we also have new drive units, new motors, new two-speed rear transmission. Now, the 2026 EQS got a bigger battery with, I believe, a new chemistry compared to the 2025 model year EQS, which I believe had like a 109 kilowatt hour usable battery. Then it was 118 in the 2026 model year. Now it's 122 in the 2027 model year. A Mercedes quotes 925 kilometers of WLTP range, almost 1,000 kilometers. That is like 530 miles. Let me double check my math. Geez, no, that's 575 miles. 925 kilometers is 575 miles. That is absolutely crazy. Now, the WLTP cycle isn't as real world range accurate as the EPA, for instance. If I put that figure into an EV range converter that I like to use to really get a more accurate figure on what the EPA range would be, that's about 500 real world miles of range, which is really good. For a while, the Lucid Air has been touting, right, it's 520 miles of range. So we got the EQS kind of catching up there, and we got more and more models approaching or at 500 miles of range. It's becoming where 250 miles is the standard. 300 miles is now really the standard. We got multiple models pushing 400 miles, and soon 500 miles will really be where everyone wants to be at. And that is actually insane. Also worth mentioning that this EQS has steer-by-wire, which is pretty interesting. Now, a lot of the press photos and videos that you've already seen on screen are with the yoke. Remember when Tesla introduced the yoke on the Model S and X, and that was the only steering wheel you could have? Horrible choice, okay? And of course, Tesla was like, yeah, guys, we're bringing the steering wheel back. And thank God they did that. Mercedes is doing the same thing. They are adding a wheel option for a regular round steering wheel, but I'm not sure why they don't just show us the regular round steering wheel so it doesn't confuse anyone, all right? Because round wheels are where it's at. We want round wheels. But steer by wire, this changes the steering ratio. Instead of having to turn the wheel, 6-7 times to, go through a full turning radius. Of course, the Mercedes also has rear wheel steer, so that gives it a shorter turning radius. But this means that the steering wheel doesn't make a full 360 turn. It just turns 180 on each side. And that full 180 degree turn to the right or left will give you full hard right, hard left. Does that make sense? It seems mechanical steering will be standard on the EQS, but you can get steer-by-wire as an option, which is interesting. I don't think we've really seen that before. It's really just steer-by-wire is the standard for a lot of vehicles like the Cybertruck. It's just steer-by-wire. I believe like the Lexus RZ or whatever their EV is, it's just steer-by-wire. And so this, you have the option between steer-by-wire or regular mechanically linked steering. Now, in tandem with the Mercedes EQS rear-wheel steering, they say that this steer-by-wire just adds a lot more lateral control to the EQS, more enhanced driving stability. It'll be interesting to see how the EQS feels with steer-by-wire versus a regular mechanical steering wheel. We'll definitely have to get our hands on that and see how it differs. Now, I will say it says it's optional in the Mercedes-Benz USA press release for this 2027 EQS. Often, though, Mercedes and a lot of other, foreign automakers will bring the higher spec or just certain options to the United States, especially because the EQS is not made in the United States. The EQS SUV, which we'll talk about in a second, but the EQS sedan, I believe, is made in Germany. And so we'll see if they do bring both options, steer-by-wire versus not. But I wouldn't be surprised if they just bring like one to the United States and that just being just steer-by-wire. I realistically wouldn't be surprised if the EQS really gets a range closer to like 425, 450 miles of EPA rated range. Mind you, the 2026 EQS got 390 miles of rated range. One thing you probably are asking is, okay, Isaiah, this is an 800 volt EQS. How is it going to charge on 400 volt infrastructure? And that is because, like the Tesla Cybertruck, the EQS's battery is split. So they don't seem to have a DC to DC converter, something like we see in the Lucid Gravity, or I believe actually the Mercedes CLA, which has a DC to DC converter for the US model year. The EQS just has a split pack. So this allows the EQS to charge up to 175 kilowatts on a 400 volt station. So if you're at something like a Tesla supercharger, you can get up to 175 kilowatts peak. In their press release, there was no mention of a NACS charging port, but because The newer Mercedes models are getting a NACS charging port. Even the CLA has a NACS and J1772 charging port. I'm expecting the same thing for the EQS, for it to have a NACS charging port. Now, the charging port is located on the passenger rear, which is one of the more like weird choices that Mercedes has made for the EQS. And so it is not going to fit perfectly on version 3 Tesla supercharging sites. And that's just going forward. If you're making a new platform EV, move the charging port in a good position. I previously mentioned that the EQS has a new 2-speed transmission. So previously the EQS had just a single speed transmission. And this new 2-speed transmission, which I believe is something that we see in all of the newer generation Mercedes EVs, is that at higher speeds, the motors can move at a lower RPM, which means that the motors are using less energy, making them more efficient, meaning that you're getting more range on the road. Your Mercedes EQS is more efficient on the highway than before, more cruising efficiency. And that is really cool. Mercedes also noted that the EQS has up to 385 kilowatt regenerative braking. Now that said, I don't remember what Mercedes has changed for their one pedal driving. I believe the EQS during my road trip, it didn't have one pedal driving. It like slowed down and it used a blended brake system between the brakes and regen. And I hope that the EQS has one pedal driving, especially for a 122 kilowatt hour battery. And that's this usable size, and 385 kilowatt regen. Just make one pedal driving, please. On into the interior, Mercedes is upgrading the EQS to their new Mercedes-Benz updated operating software. And so again, we're moving towards this world of software defined, developed vehicles. You know, everything has zonal architecture, less ECUs and less wiring, 48-volt architecture, AI. We've heard these words before. So Mercedes is joining the crowd. And so a central vehicle software backbone, full over-the-air software update capability, and it is a cloud-based architecture. And they will now have the Mercedes-Benz UX. This is kind of a newer generation. It should perform a little better compared to previous generations. Mercedes is also keeping the lineup the same for the EQS. The 450 Plus is the rear-wheel drive, the EQS 500 is the all-wheel drive, and the 580 is the top trim. We will probably get an AMG version of the EQS, this new generation, so that'll be interesting to see, and maybe we won't. Mercedes is working on an AMG EV, so maybe they won't even do that, and they'll just let that be their sports sedan. We'll see. All right, that is it for most of the specs. Let's talk about the fun stuff that this car has. Starting off with reverse maneuvering function. Mercedes-Benz reverse maneuvering function is an advanced parking assistant that records the last 328 feet driven forward at speeds under 37 miles an hour, allowing the car to automatically steer back along the same path. So imagine you're in your EQS and you drive down some dark alley. Very creepy, scary. You don't like this. However, it's like one lane. And so for you to back out, you'd have to back up really slow, and you'd have to, one little turn of the steering wheel, then you're going to end up too close to the wall. You can activate reverse maneuvering function, and the Mercedes will automatically reverse for you. Mercedes also says that this new system will be able to react to bumps in the road and then have the suspension react before it reaches the bumps. Usually, when you're driving, your car will hit a bump and the suspension will react to it. But instead, the suspension is moving itself before it hits the bump to ensure that when it hits the bump, you're just feeling as minimal things as possible. Again, it's the S-Class. Things got to be luxurious and nice feeling. And that is a pretty cool feature. The EQS also gets larger screens in the rear as optional, more buttons, remotes, tablets. It has heated seat belts as an option, rear seat belt airbags. Like, there's a lot with the EQS, but that's it for now. I do want to talk about the EQS SUV, though, because this makes things interesting. Now, BMW just announced that they are canceling the iX in the United States. They're going to continue to make the iX in other regions and sell it across the world, but they're not going to sell it in the United States any longer. And on paper, the iX and the iX3, their new EV, 800 volt, fast charging, higher range, new software, it's just objectively a better vehicle, is only marginally smaller. And so it's also cheaper. And so just it makes it on the surface, a better deal just to get the iX3. So I wonder one of two things. If Mercedes is going to update the EQS SUV, we're going to see a lot of these same architecture changes and brought over to the EQS, or are they just going to cancel the EQS SUV and just make the GLS standard? It's also cheaper and it's the same things. Faster charging, better range, better price. And so it kind of makes the EQS SUV obsolete in a lot of ways. But the EQS now is matching with its other Mercedes siblings, getting to 800 volts, better charging, better range, more efficient. And that's what we like to hear. But that is all like the fun stuff that I wanted to talk about the EQS SUV. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. It's $100,000 sedan. I'm not buying this, but it's fun to dream. It's fun to dream with you guys about what possibly if we were all millionaires and we wanted to ride in luxury. But I'm sure someone out there watching this is going to buy themselves an EQS. And to you, my good sir or lady, congratulations. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name's Isaiah. This is Out of Spec Bits, and auf Wiedersehen.